Coming up on Network Africa, at least 4 people are killed in nationwide transport protests in Kenya. The death toll rises to 131 in the Democratic Republic of Congo's Ebola outbreak. Plus, Somaliland marks Independence Day, calls for international recognition. Welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi. We begin in Kenya, where at least 4 people have been killed during nationwide transport protests. The unrest erupted after public transport workers launched a strike, bringing movement across parts of the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, to a standstill. The strike, dubbed #Reject Fuel Prices, began at midnight after Matatu, known as minibus operators, and other transport groups suspended services following a call by the Transport Sector Alliance. Protesters blocked highways, lit bonfires on major roads, and attempted to halt private vehicles and motorbike taxis in several cities, including Nairobi, Mombasa, Nakuru, Eldoret, and Nyeri. The protests triggered by sharp fuel price increases, including a 23.5% rise in diesel. The authorities say were driven by global oil shocks linked to instability in the Middle East and disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. Officials emphasized that Kenya, which is heavily dependent on imported fuel, has been hit hard by rising international prices. Interior officials have confirmed 4 fatalities, but have not provided further details on the circumstances around their deaths. Meanwhile, security forces have been deployed to several hotspots across Kenya, especially where tensions have escalated between demonstrators and police. The strike has brought daily life to a standstill. Schools have been closed, businesses shut early, and major roads into Nairobi's central business district have been left unusually empty. Let's get an update on this now. Joining us is Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati. He's in Nairobi. Cyrus, thank you for joining us on the program today. And just before we begin, could you just give us an idea of what you saw this morning regarding those protests and how they played out the rest of the day?
Well, thank you for having me the show. Today was the second day for this protest to take place because after yesterday's attempts to solve the issue failed. Now the protesters again went back to, rather they boycotted services today, and there was nothing happening in major cities in Kenya. As it was yesterday, roads were deserted, the shops were closed in the capital and other urban areas, and there was nothing going on, and it's a big loss for government in terms of revenue collection. Because no one reported to work today and yesterday. It was 2 days, which is a big loss, to say the least.
And we know that those protests have been fueled by, the fuel crisis, caused, of course, by what's going on with between Iran and the United States, and the Strait of Hormuz has been blocked. Has the Kenyan government been able to make any intervention since the start of the crisis, perhaps to help people understand that they're also being affected by this and they're doing something about it?
Well, the government has been trying to make explanations on how and why they are importing this fuel and why it's increasing. But then there is a lot of doubt from the government or the public at large, because Kenya has been saying that they have an agreement between Saudi Arabia and the UAE on the importation of these fuel products to Kenya. But then the cost is actually rising all the time since the war started in Iran. There's no explanation on why they are increasing, because there are claims that the fuel that Kenya gets does not pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but then the government says that this fuel passes through that route. That's why the cost of importing the same is rising. Since then, there has been a kind of doubt, push and pull from the government side, the public, and now it actually came to where we were yesterday and today.
Cyrus, as you're speaking and we're looking at these pictures, on our screens of the violence taking place, the clashes between the protesters and, the police, these are scenes that are quite common in Kenya, when there is a protest.
Well, it's the first time that we are seeing such, for longest time, such incident happening. There's a protest or boycott by the public transport system or other operators because of this issue. The cost of living actually is affecting everyone. Apart from the matatus or rather the public service providers who led in the protest, there are so many others who joined in. People like those who are drilling boreholes, the farmers who are using tractors for diesel for their job, the consumers or the commuters who are using this public service system because we are increasing the cost of traveling, but there's no increase in terms of salaries. So it was kind of a combination of so many people who are involved in this issue that they all came together now to oppose the entire system.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the violence, between the police and the protesters. We see that a lot with Kenyan protests. There's always security on the ground. They're firing shots at protesters. People have been wounded. We actually have seen someone in the video who's been wounded, possibly by gunshots. Why are protests in Kenya this way? Why are they always, violent? Why does the police always resort to force to disperse protesters?
That's the issue everyone is raising here. Even human rights activists here in the country today, they had a press conference. They are condemning police action because they usually come with a high-handedness. But then the police are claiming that the people who are targeted, they are looters. The people who came, of course, to take advantage of this protest to loot and destroy property. That's why they shot them. And then, but there's no explanation. There's no justification rather to kill somebody. Police are supposed to shoot and maybe maim somebody for arrest for prosecution. But then it's an issue of a systemic problem which has been ongoing for the longest. And the government or other international agencies have been intervening, trying to train the policemen on how to handle such issues. But then it seems it's not working. Because even today, we had deaths, apart from the four that who were killed since yesterday, as you said. There are two others who are, we understand, who were killed in the central part of Rift Valley, or rather Rift Valley part of the country. Then even as we speak, even though the protests have been called off for a week, we expect that they may come back again and more chaos may come after a week.
Well, so the protesters have withdrawn from the streets. The Matatus say they've given the government 1 week, and after which they will return. What happens to those who have been arrested? What happens to those who have been injured? Is there any word on their fate?
Yeah, they were those who were arrested yesterday. They were producing court today, and they were released on $50 each of them. That's 5,000 shillings, Kenyan shillings, and then the case will be heard in 2 weeks' time. Those injured, they are nursing their own wounds in hospital. There are around 40 of them. That's a nice issue now because the families have to pay the bills. That's the cost of now kind of having such kind of protests. You will remain alone as an individual to address your problems. It's now an issue of now waiting to see what happens after a week because I fear that there might be a fallout again between the parties involved.
Well, Cyrus, thank you again for bringing us the update, and do stay safe.
Thank you so much for having the show.
We're still in Kenya, where the country is also confronting an unusual form of wildlife trafficking, the smuggling of giant African harvester ants. Outside Nairobi, entomologist Dr. Dino Martins, speaking about the insect sprawling nests, says what seems ordinary in the wild has become highly prized among collectors abroad. Queen ants of the species Mesocephalotis can sell for hundreds of dollars online. Each colony depends on a single queen, which may live for up to 20 years and produce every ant in the nest. Kenyan authorities say the trade amounts to biopiracy and are stepping up efforts to stop traffickers from exploiting one of Africa's smallest but most remarkable creatures. And away from Kenya, the death toll continues to rise from the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Officials announced that at least 131 deaths have been reported, with more than 513 suspected cases. A spokesperson for the government says cases are now being reported over a wider area. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there have also been 2 confirmed cases and 1 death in neighboring Uganda. This marks the DRC's 17th Ebola outbreak since 1976. It began in late April in Bunia and Mungwalu mining zone. The crisis hit just months after the 16th outbreak ended in December, which recorded 64 cases and 45 deaths. The country's deadliest epidemic, spanning from 2018 to 2020, claimed nearly 2,300 lives. The African CDC warns that ongoing rebel violence and mass displacement in the region are heavily complicating contact tracing efforts. The World Health Organization has declared the outbreak an international emergency. This current epidemic is caused by the Bundibugyo virus strain. And yesterday at the World Health Assembly in Geneva, Switzerland, WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said the road down which many countries are now walking is one our forefathers led 78 years ago. He emphasized WHO's transformation over the past 9 years in 3 key areas: strengthening science and data systems, improving emergency preparedness after COVID-19, and reforming WHO's financing model to make it more stable and independent. He's also stressed the need to reshape the global health architecture, reduce donor dependency, and support greater health sovereignty for countries, praising initiatives such as Ghana's Accra Reset.
There are 3 key areas in which WHO has transformed: science, emergencies, and finance, among others. Now, I would like to update you briefly on the comprehensive process of prioritization and realignment that we have undergone in the past 16 months. Although the first 2 increases in assessed contribution cushioned the impact of the funding cuts we faced, they could not insulate us fully. In close consultation with member states, we reduced our program budget and undertook a rigorous analysis of every office and every program. Unfortunately, we were left with no choice but to say goodbye to a large number of dedicated, hard-working colleagues. In the past year, many countries have experienced severe disruptions due to sudden and steep cuts in the development assistance. Those disruptions and the damage they caused to the health of individuals, families, and communities were regrettable and avoidable.
Well, back to the Ebola outbreak. Uganda has set up border controls to prevent the introduction of the virus into the country. Health workers have begun checking people's temperatures, while also helping them wash their hands near Bundibugyo in the western region of the country. The outbreak, believed to have killed more than 130 people, has been declared an international health emergency by the WHO. This latest epidemic is caused by the less common Bundibugyo strain, for which there is no vaccine or specific treatment. Return now to Sudan for a follow-up on the humanitarian crisis, where residents in the East Nile areas of Khartoum are still facing severe water shortages, relying on donations and tanker deliveries as basic services remain disrupted. UN agencies have warned that nearly 19.5 million people, around 2 in 5 Sudanese, are facing high levels of acute food insecurity, with approximately 135,000 people already facing catastrophic hunger. Additionally, a UN-backed assessment shows that around 40% of health facilities are non-functional, while an estimated 17 million people lack access to safe drinking water and 24 million lack adequate sanitation. Repeated outbreaks of cholera, measles, malaria, and other diseases are worsening conditions, especially for young children and pregnant women. Fighting between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, which broke out in April 2023, has displaced millions of people and devastated civilian infrastructure, including health facilities, water systems, markets, and agricultural assets. Here's where we take a break on Network Africa. Still ahead. The Africa Union Development Agency, a new partnership for Africa's development hosts, gala dinner in commemoration of its 25th anniversary. Welcome back. The Chief Executive Officer of AUDA-NEPAD, Nardos Bekele Thomas, is calling for greater urgency in turning Africa's continental ambitions into tangible development outcomes. Bekele Thomas was speaking at the gala dinner held in honor of NEPAD's steering committee and to commemorate the 25 years since the establishment of the committee. The gathering also served as an opportunity to assess the continent's progress in implementing Agenda 2063. Our correspondent Innocent Samosa reports.
Africa's development story took center stage in Johannesburg as AUDA-NEPAD commemorated 25 years. The gala dinner formed part of AUDA-NEPAD steering committee engagements, bringing together leaders and stakeholders to reflect on the journey from NEPAD to AUDA-NEPAD.
These 25 years is also a reminder that the institutions are not built in a single moment. They are built through conviction, through continuity, through difficult choices, and through the discipline of carrying an idea across generations.
The Chief Executive Officer of AUDA-NEPAD, Nardos Bekele Thomas, is calling on African countries to deepen regional integration as the continent responds to mounting global shocks.
And if you look at all the repercussions of these crisis, it's about fuel, right? And we have both crude oil, but we just import the crude oil and get refined oil. And today, thanks to Nigeria, it has shown us Dangote refinery is being talked and discussed and being implanted.
Delegates are telling me that the conflict in the Middle East is a wake-up call for the African continent to be self-sufficient and stay resilient.
Traditional ways of financing development are shifting. So what we need to look at are new ways of financing development, domestic resource mobilization, investment flows that are harnessed and shifted into sustainability. Foreign direct investment plays a part, official development assistance also plays its part. But now is this, I would say, basket of different sources of funding that we need to look at and harness, and the continent has a responsibility to actually be at the forefront of doing that.
Okay, I think what I would say is that the issue in the Middle East, if you ask me, is a wake-up call for Africa. Because the way you look at it will be like when there is issues like this, Africa shouldn't have allowed to go to waste, which means that we should have, paid more attention to local development. Some countries might probably be having, some kind of advantages, but we know that critical mass of our member states across Africa are, bearing the brunt.
The commemorative dinner also celebrated partnerships that have contributed to Africa's development ambitions over the years. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Somaliland has marked its Independence Day with renewed calls for international recognition 5 months after Israel became the first UN member nation to formally recognize the breakaway region. During the Independence Parade ceremony in Hargeisa, President Abdirahman Abdullahi said Somaliland has met all the standards of a peaceful and democratic state, urging the international community to move beyond debates over Somaliland's legitimacy. Somaliland declared independence from Somalia in 1991, but has yet to gain broad international recognition. While Israel's decision was celebrated by many, it also sparked divisions, with some residents concerned about regional tensions and opposition from parts of Somaliland's Eastern Territories. And a historic milestone has been recorded in the United Kingdom. Councillor Christopher Adigoke has been elected chairman of the Nottinghamshire County Council, the first black and minority individual to hold the position since the council's establishment in 1889. The achievement has drawn praise from Nigeria's diaspora leadership, with the chairperson of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri-Erewa, describing the development as a proud moment for Nigerians worldwide. She said Adigoke's election reflects the resilience, excellence, and leadership capacity of Nigerians in public service across the globe, while also commending Nottinghamshire County Council for its inclusive governance. Adigoke, who has over 2 decades of experience in education, administration, and community leadership, said he's committed to engaging residents, charities, and businesses throughout his tenure. His official inauguration as chairman and first citizen of Nottinghamshire is scheduled for June 28th this year. And ahead of Eid al-Adha, Bamako's livestock markets are bustling. However, sheep prices are soaring amid economic hardship and mounting security concerns, complicating preparations for one of the country's most important religious celebrations. As buyers lament the high prices, traders say insecurity along major roads has disrupted livestock supply chains. Curfews and fears of attacks along transport routes have further complicated deliveries to Bamako's markets, with animals sometimes spending several days in transit before reaching the capital. Despite concerns over prices and security, some residents claim that shortages are being exaggerated to justify higher prices. Eid al-Adha, known as the Festival of Sacrifice, is among the most important Islamic celebrations, marked by sheep sacrifices and family gatherings. The festival comes as Mali continues to face economic pressure and security challenges linked to armed groups operating in parts of the country. And before we go, here's a fun fact about Somaliland. It is situated in the Horn of Africa, bordered by Ethiopia, Djibouti, the Gulf of Aden, and Somalia, making it highly strategic for global trade routes. It is home to Las Gil, a complex of caves and rock shelters containing some of the oldest and best preserved prehistoric rock art in the Horn of Africa. The paintings depict early pastoralists, domesticated dogs, and ceremonial figures showcasing a deep history of human habitation in the region. And now you know. That's Network Africa. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Bani.